Hi, welcome to another episode of the Caroline Glick Show. We've been seeing a lot of atrocities coming out of Gaza, and the question is, what is motivating them? And I think one of the things that people have spent very little time talking about is Islam and the Jihadist doctrine that's at the heart of the Sunni Islam practiced by the Muslim Brotherhood, of which Hamas is the Palestinian branch. We talked a lot about jihad in Western societies after 9/11. There were a lot of people who were writing very important books about it. But then somewhere, I don't know, maybe with the U.S. withdrawal from Iraq, I'm not quite sure when, maybe it was when Obama was elected, but the discourse on Islam just disappeared. And now here we are in 2023, and people have to relearn what they barely learned after 9/11, which is what is the jihad. What is the doctrine of jihad in Islam? How is it viewed by Hamas? How is it viewed by the Islamic world as a whole? How is it viewed by the Palestinians? And so for a long time, I've been wanting to have as a guest at this show, Dr. Mordechai Kedar. Dr. Kedar is one of the world's leading experts on Islam and specifically on jihad. And so we're going to talk about that right now. And I want to welcome you, Dr. Kedar, to my show today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's great to finally have you. I was going to have you, I think, shortly after October 7th, but things got bollocksed up, so I'm glad we were able to make it today. I want to start with rape. Let's start with a bang. We have been finally having a discussion about the dimensions of the sexual abuse, the brutal rapes, mutilation that women and men were victimized by on October 7th in southern Israel at the Nova Festival specifically, but at the Kibbutzim as well. And we're also hearing stories about the continuation of this sexual abuse and brutalization by Hamas and the Palestinians in Gaza more general of the hostages that they're holding. And I want to start a discussion with a video that surfaced this week that was a memory take from September of 2014. So right after the last major violent episode between Hamas and Israel of Operation Protective Edge. And they showed an interview, I think it was, with a professor at Al-Azhar University of Islam, a female named Suad Saleh. And she was explaining that it's absolutely allowed in Islam for Muslim fighters to take sex slaves among prisoners of war. And specifically, she was talking about Jewish women, Israeli women. She said, here's a quote that I just took down: Muslims can capture slave girls and have sex with them. It's legitimate. Their legitimate owned slaves come from among prisoners of a war which is waged against the Muslims, a war to plunder land, a war against our faith. So since they consider this to be a jihad, I guess, then they think that it's legitimate to rape and keep as sex slaves Jews from Israel. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Well, as you know, the Prophet Muhammad is the role model for every Muslim because his ways were enlightened by Allah. He was infallible.
Infallible.
Ma'soom, as they say in Arabic, cannot make any mistake. So whatever he did is actually the way how every Muslim should behave. This in general. In this particular point, Muhammad and Ali, actually, his cousin, they slaughtered hundreds of Jews of the Qurayza family who lived in Medina. And one of the victims was an adolescent boy who was engaged to a young girl named Safiya. She was the daughter of one of the leaders of this Jewish clan. And after the boy was slaughtered, Muhammad himself took Safiya as his wife, and he materialized the marriage right in his tent immediately. She was like 14 years old.
So he raped her.
Raped her. Means, allegedly, he married her and immediately consummated the marriage. So this is how he the prophet behaved. So
I heard that he also murdered Sophia's family. Is that correct? Or
yeah, of course, the men, the males.
So not just her betrothed, not just her fiance, but that he had also
the males of this clan.
Uh-huh.
And women anyway are not counted. They are not more than walking wombs, so they can kill them. In Islam, a lady doesn't have to convert to Islam in order to have Muslim children. Because if a Muslim marries a Jewish lady or a Christian lady, her children follow him in the religion. So they are Muslims. She can be Jewish, she can be Christian, whatever. But her children will be Muslim because he is a Muslim. So it really doesn't matter if she converted to Islam in his tent or not. Anyway, he is allowed to have her and to have children with her, and they will be full Muslims. So this is the example for Muhammad, no less.
But how do you explain the gang rapes then? I mean, because wouldn't it just be that they take one woman for one man? But here we had example after example of gang rapes.
This is something which comes from another thing. Islam gave the Muslims, the mu'minin, the believers, the lands of the infidels, the property of the infidels, the life of the infidels, and the girls of the infidels, to do whatever they like with them. This is the reward which they get for their jihad against the infidels. They can take whatever they like. The girls or the women are called mulk al-yamin, means the property of your right hand, which your strong hand, and this is actually how it is called in like a code name, mulk al-yamin, but it means women, girls, and whoever they can get in order to do with them whatever they like. So this is the reward. By the way, it comes in rape cases in Europe when migrants rape local ladies and they are interrogated. It comes out in many cases. They belong to us because they are Christian, because they are Jewish, I don't know, because they are not Muslims. So they, means the girls, we can do with them whatever we like. So if we rape them, it's our right. This is how people go around and they look at the foreign girls with this kind of thinking. So if they rape them, this is their right.
So they said, actually, I mean, is this something that is widely embraced? Because what came out in some of the interrogations of the Hamas terrorists that have been arrested, who took part in the October 7th slaughter, was that they had undergone over the 2 years leading up to the invasion, that they had undergone a religious indoctrination, so that in addition to their military training and weapons training, they were receiving Islamic indoctrination. Was that necessary? Was that something that they had to do in order to be convinced?
No, this is general. This is in general. What you can see it with ISIS. You could see also people.
What do they do in those indoctrinations?
They learn about the jihad, the necessity of jihad, and what will be your reward in this world and in the other world. The 72 virgins which are waiting for them in heaven. So some of them have the heaven already here in this world. And this is the indoctrination about don't come back, means don't retrieve from the jihad, go forward. They learned about the story of Ja'far bin Abi Talib, the cousin of Muhammad, who was fighting the Byzantines. And of course, the Muslims were a small group, but the Byzantines were a big army. And they stabbed him 50 times when they found his corpse. He was stabbed in 50 places, and each of every stab was in the front. Means he did not try to run away. And this is the story. And his reward, that he, by the way, the Byzantines also chopped his hand off, both hands. So Muhammad in his funeral said that this Ja'far is in heaven, but not only in heaven. Allah replaced his arms with wings, and he is flying above paradise. meaning he's so high that he is flying. This is why his name is Jafar al-Tayyar. This is his epithet. Means Jafar the flyer, because he has wings instead of the hands or the arms which the Byzantines chopped off. So this is the reward of you go to heaven because he didn't try to run away from the war, from the battle against the Byzantines. So, and this happened in 630 CE, and this story, they learned it by heart in order to enable them to go into the battle, not to run away, just like what Jafar did in that battle in Mu'tah, which is the southern Jordan of today. So these are the stories which they learn in this indoctrination about the heroes of those years of beginning of Islam in order to follow their footsteps.
What about what about the treatment of men? What does Jihad tell them about the treatment of our soldiers, of the men that they took? We talk a lot about the women, and we might get back to that, but what about the men?
Well, all in all, the attitude to the victims is meant for, first of all, to take advantage of the fact that they are, to have pleasure with us. This is why would they go with the girls or rape the girls. But the attitude to the victims is also meant to strike terror in the hearts of the infidels. Because if you release them without a nose or without ears or without other things which you cut off, and you can imagine what, they will go and all the others will be afraid of Islam and they will run away. And the job will be easier. And this actually is based on a verse in the Quran which says, and prepare against them, means against the infidels, whatever you have from power and bound horses in order to strike terror into the hearts of your enemies and the enemies of Allah. Means that the idea of striking terror into the hearts of your enemies is something which is based on the Quran. And by the way, the emblem or the logo of the Muslim Brotherhood carries a hint to this verse, because this verse starts with a word which appears in the Quran only one time. And this particular word appears on the emblem of the Muslim Brotherhood.
What is it?
Wa'iddu, and prepare. And prepare against them. And this is the big. And this word appears on. So, Hillary Clinton once said something like, our Qatari friends keep telling us that the Muslim Brotherhood are a peaceful organization. Something like this. Well, she didn't do the homework of the first lesson of how you learn about organizations. Look at their emblem. Okay, a peace organization will have a dove on it. Okay, medical organization will have the snake. Okay, so these are basics. The Muslim Brotherhood emblem has two swords with a book, which is the Quran, and this word wa'iddu means and prepare against them, whatever you have from power and the bound horses, on the emblem. So if she would look at the emblem and see the two swords, means the first lesson, the first homework, which you prepare about an organization. She didn't do it, but she listens to the Qatari friends. While Qatar is it's the biggest supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood all over the world, including the United States of America, and of course Hamas as well. And this is why I think that Qatar should be sued for supporting terror all over the world.
They should certainly not have, the Biden administration granted them major non-NATO ally status, which is a status that Israel has, and they're the most dangerous state supporter of terrorism in the world because everybody pretends that they're not doing it, because while they're funding ISIS and Hamas and everybody else, they're also funding Carnegie Mellon and Yale and MIT and everything else. So you're looking at this organization who is two swords in a way, right? The sword of taqiyya, is that right? Of lying, and the sword of jihad. Or you just
well, those swords on the emblem are curved, are not straight. You cannot stab anybody with them because they will break. You know what to do with curved?
You turn it into somebody's head.
You chop the head of somebody. This is the swords which appear on the emblem of the Muslim Brotherhood.
So wait, actually, if we're already talking about Qatar, I don't want to talk specifically about Qatar. I want to first get some of these fundamentals of jihad so we can understand what's motivating these people. So, but in the vein of Qatar, Qatar really does engage in strategic use of deception. And we saw that with Hamas in the period ahead of October 7th. I don't know how you want to count it, if it's 1 year, 2 years, however long we want to go back with our incompetent IDF intelligence people who were believing everything that they were telling us and convinced that they just want a good life like us. How do they view, how does like the jihadist doctrine, for lack of a better term or whatever, how does it view deception? What is the purpose?
Well, in the old tradition, the hadith, there is a saying that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, al-harb khuda'a, means the war is deception, or deception is a war. Means the deception is one of the tools which you can use in the framework of war. Okay, means deceive your enemy, just like what Muhammad did with the infidels of Mecca. He gave them a temporary peace in the place named Hudaybiyah, a peace which should have been for 9 years, 9 months, and 9 days, almost 10 years. However, when he realized that they fell asleep on God, after 2 years, he violated it and attacked them and destroyed everything in Mecca. And from this, Muslims learn 2 things. One, if you, the Muslim, you are weak, and the infidel is too strong, so you can give him a temporary peace. The second thing is, if the infidel falls asleep on God, you can do whatever you like to him, even within the time of the temporary peace, because this is what Muhammad did. And since he did it, you are allowed to do this because this is the Sharia, or this is the way how a Muslim should behave. So they can deceive Israel as if they want peace or work in Israel, money, development, health, whatever we want. And we will look at them as we look at ourselves, and we will not realize what they do behind the scenes in order to attack us. This is the deception. But here, I have to make it very clear. Jihad is not only the jihad by sword, means military jihad. Jihad is actually, the translation of the word is an attempt or effort.
A struggle. It's like Mein Kampf. My jihad is, right? It's a struggle.
But effort, or I would say a strong effort which you put into something. This is the real or the deep meaning of jihad. It's the word Jim Haydar. Jihad is not only by sword. There is economic jihad. If you support economically the fighters of jihad, you take part in this. And according to the Sharia, you have part in the reward because you support them with your horse or with your weapons or food which you give them, or if you let them sleep or whatever. Whatever you give to the jihadists, although you don't take active part in the fight, you still are part of the jihad, and you have the reward. If you, let's say, establish an organization which will educate people to go to the jihad, this is the education jihad, not economic, education jihad. If you establish a TV channel which will encourage people, like Al Jazeera, which will encourage people to go to the jihad, this is a media jihad, which is also a part of the jihad. Qaradawi talked about exactly, but Al Jazeera, he was appearing at Al Jazeera every week when he was alive, and then he was speaking about Al Jazeera as the media jihad.
Right.
If you establish a WhatsApp group or Telegram group which will recruit people or encourage people to the jihad, it is also kind of social media jihad.
I heard
If you set fire in a grove or in a forest which belongs to the infidels, this is an arson jihad, or in a church or in a synagogue. This is an arson jihad. If you steal a car which belongs to the infidels, this is another part of the economic jihad because you take their economy away. So everything which a Muslim is doing in order to have the word of Allah, the superior, and the word of the infidels, the inferior, this is part of the jihad.
So two things. I want to take it in two directions now. So we talked about Qatar, and I heard is an Israeli strategic expert, Guy Bachol, who I'm sure you're aware of. He gave, I was watching a snippet of a YouTube video of his earlier this week, and he said that Qatar was actually being pragmatic and pro-Israel. In 2006, he claimed that one of the leaders of Qatar flew to Tel Aviv in disguise and tried to buy Merkava tanks from Israel, and that he changed his mind after Israel or the Qataris turned against us after we failed to destroy Hezbollah in the 2006 war. But that didn't, his claim made little sense to me since they formed Al Jazeera in 1996 and they were Al-Qaeda's home station in the years that followed. That was where he gave his declaration of war against the United States, etc. But was there, I mean, how, I guess the question isn't so much was whether Guy Bachor is right about 2006 specifically, but how important is pragmatic interests in calculations of whether to embrace jihad or not? Because we also know that Saudi Arabia, until the Arab Spring, was very supportive of jihad, and then they turned away from it after the Arab Spring. So, okay, so make some sense of the situation.
First of all, Saudi Arabia as a state was never for jihad because it was a target of the jihad. Who was for jihad? The extremists who were against the ruling family in Saudi Arabia.
But the Wahhabis were extremists who made a deal with the Sauds.
Wahhabis are purists. They are not for jihad, which is against the regimes. But, by the way, this is why they hate the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Muslim Brotherhood hate them.
But they funded all the Muslim Brotherhood mosques in the West. The Saudi Muslim League.
Don't be mistaken. Saudi Arabia, the Wahhabis of Saudi Arabia are institutional Islam. Islam which is supposed to support the institutions. This is how because the Saudi regime actually is based on two legs. One is the family, the ruling family, the Saud, and the other is the three families of scholars who actually legitimize everything which the ruling family is doing. Okay. Even if they torture people, I can show you books, mind-boggling books. If you, the citizens, are suffering from the regime, it's because of your sins. Means they give Hersher, seal of approval, for everything which the regime is doing, and this is the role in Saudi Arabia. Muslim Brotherhood is revolutionary Islam, right, against the regime, against the system. And this is why Saudi Arabia hates the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Muslim Brotherhood, all the organizations, hate Saudi Arabia. This way, by the way, Saudi Arabia supported Sisi in 2013 when he ousted Morsi, the president.
But before 2013, they were funding Muslim Brotherhood mosques in Europe, in the United States.
No, these were not Muslim Brotherhood, they were Wahhabi. Wahhabi are not Muslim Brotherhood. It is not easy for Westerners to understand because these are religious Muslims.
What about the 15 out of 19 9/11 terrorists who were sent?
They were people who were against the Saudi regime, just like Bin Laden. Bin Laden was against the regime. Osama Bin Laden was an oppositioner. Okay? So this way attacked America, which supported the Saudi regime.
But I mean, Princess Haifa was the wife of the Saudi Prince Bandar, who was the ambassador to the United States. She paid money to two of the 9/11.
Apparently, she didn't know who they are and what they were, only because they were citizens. Because Saudi Arabia does support citizens of Saudi Arabia. I'm not sure that she knew their intentions, what they are supposed to do, or what they intend to do. But in general, in principle, the Saudi regime is totally, overwhelmingly against the Muslim Brotherhood organizations like Hamas, like Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. This is why Saudi Arabia supported Sisi, the secular general who ousted
Morsi from the Muslim
Morsi.
Brotherhood.
Yes, and they gave him like $5 billion one day after Obama said that he is holding support of $3 billion. So the Saudis gave him more, only because they didn't like Morsi. Qatar, on the contrary,
They funded Morsi.
they funded Morsi, they funded the Muslim Brotherhood, and this is one of the reasons why Saudi Arabia and the Emirates put a siege
In 2017.
on Qatar.
Right. That lasted until the Biden administration came
Right.
into office, and then
And
they
saved them.
just gave up.
Yeah, this is what I mean. You have to look into the relations within the Sunni.
So you're saying that, okay, because this is actually an important point that I did not know. You're saying that the Saudis didn't shift, and then the question is, what about the Qataris? Have the Qataris
Yes.
shifted?
Yes.
When did they
And it's amazing because originally the Qatari family, the Al Thani, are also Wahhabis. But they didn't join the kingdom for different reasons. And they were supposed to be like Saudi Arabia, like the Emirates, and the same guy, and the same way of thinking. Yet Qaradawi, when he migrated to Qatar, running away from
In the
Egypt,
1960s, from Nasser, he was thrown out, right?
a bit later in the days of Mubarak, but he was there. He didn't mean to be anybody in Qatar because he is not Wahhabi and he is not Qatari. He's Egypt. His language is different. He just found asylum, but somebody discovered him and had a meeting for him with the emir, and he actually turned him from being a tribal emirate-like ruler or leader into a Muslim Brotherhood supporter. And this is a big shift from Wahhabi to be Muslim Brotherhood supporter. And Qaradawi did it by himself. He had a very strong way how to convince people. He knew so much and he convinced them. By the way, he actually, one of the broadcasters of Al Jazeera, Khadija Ben Kena, who was totally secular, he made her wear the hijab and return to Islam. To that degree, this man was influential. So he actually turned Qatar, Qaradawi, the Muslim Brotherhood activist, or I would say leader or thinker, he turned Qatar to be Muslim Brotherhood supporter, although originally they are Wahhabis, like the Saudis. And this is a bit complicated, but this is what happened.
Around when was that?
It was along the 90s.
When they founded Al Jazeera in 96.
96, yes. So this is more or less when it was a gradual process, but definitely very
But that was the emir who's the father of the current
the
emir?
grandfather.
The grandfather.
Grandfather and more so with the father. So this is how Qatar became a Muslim Brotherhood supporter against the will of the Saudis, against the will of the Emirates, against everybody, and this actually what gave Qatar the nice posture for Iran, because Qatar and Iran are in the same boat. Of course, they share a big gas field, the biggest in the world, and they share the revenues. And so Qatar has to follow Iran. Iran supports the Muslim Brotherhood because they are against Saudi Arabia.
Okay, let me just, now let's just move for a second. So let's talk for a second about the Ummah, and then I want to move to I want to go back to the Palestinians. So just, can we talk briefly about what is the Ummah for believing Muslims? How do they view themselves in the larger Muslim world?
Well, the Ummah in Islam is translated to be nation, the nation. But unlike Western definitions, a nation is an ethnic group. Okay, like Hungarians, like Japanese. Okay, in the Islamic
And geographical in most cases.
it's geographical, or cultural, heritage, language, religion, all kinds of components of what is a nation. In Islam, Ummah is everybody who is Muslim. It could include many ethnic groups like Arabs, Persians, Turks, Kurds, Baluchis, Pashtunis, Africans,
Caucasians.
Caucasian, everyone, since
Relax.
since everybody is Muslim, this is the Islamic Ummah. Okay, in difference from ethnic group, because the Ummah in Islam
Is a belief.
includes, why? Because the basic belief of Islam is that all the Muslims are brothers. All Muslims are brothers. So regardless of your ethnic background, you can marry with each other, you can do whatever, you should support each other because you are all Muslims. And this is actually the definition which was supposed to erase the tribalism in the beginning of Islam, because tribes were fighting each other non-stop. Muhammad came and gave them a new system, how to be together, to unite them under Allah. They should abandon all the idols, the Uzza, Eilat, El Manat, all these
Other pagan
idols,
gods.
paganism, which they had, in order to unite them. Now, he knew that they will not marry each other so quickly, because tribalism is the name of the social game in the Middle East. But abandoning the idols and embracing one idea of one God, this is easier. So this is what
And then it
Islam
also
is.
united them against people who aren't members of the Ummah.
Right. And once they are all brothers, united with or united by the religion, now they can direct their aggression to others, less the infidels, which as a reward they will get their lands, their life, their property, and their girls.
All right, so let's talk about the land of ours, the land of Israel, and the Palestinians. So you had the Arabs of the Levant, you had the Arabs of Greater Syria, you had the Arabs of the Palestine Mandate, and then they became, somewhere in the 1960s, the Palestinians of Palestinian Arabs, and now just Palestinians. So you have this group of people that weren't actually defined as a people in and of themselves until very, very recently. And they play, it seems to me, a very central role in contemporary jihad, in the way that jihadists today view how they're supposed to go about their business in terms of imposing their will on the world. Am I mistaken, or?
Well, first of all, a Palestinian nation was never mentioned in any book or any newspaper until the first decades of the 20th century. Start with this. Because until 1917, until the First World War, everybody was an Ottoman citizen. Whether you lived in Egypt or in what's
Subject
Jordan,
of the Ottoman Empire.
you're a citizen. Because whether you lived in
A citizen, not a subject? It doesn't matter. Natin, Lois.
no, they were carrying
All right.
documents of the Ottoman Empire.
Anyway,
And Syria was an area. Lebanon was an area, or Sanjak, a district, an administrative district.
I mean, Hajj Amin al-Husseini, initially, when he had his first organizing conference in Jaffa in 1930, and it was for Greater Syria, for the Arabs of Greater Syria, and he wanted to establish an Arab state in Greater Syria that would encompass Israel, Jordan, Syria, present-day Syria, and Lebanon.
It's
So
all
that
the,
was
all the
his...
definitions which came by Sykes and Picot,
Right.
in order to nullify the Western division of the Middle East, in order to create one state under Allah. And this was his idea. But by the way, he was a Muslim Brotherhood member. He was a very good friend of Hassan al-Banna.
They started it together,
founded
some people claim.
1928, yes. So he was totally against the occupation of the foreigners, against the culture of the foreigners, which started to infiltrate into the Middle East by creating all kinds of ideas, democracy, or human rights, or whatever, women's rights. You know, already in 1923, the first lady who went out to the street without her veil in Egypt was under the British occupation. So the occupation by itself, which is bad because Christians actually are ruling Muslims. This is against the rules of physics. because Islam ya'lu wa la yu'la alayhi, means Islam is superior and nothing is above Islam. It reminds us of Deutschland über alles, a little bit. So this is the way of Islam. So British or any other one, Jewish, French, who rules over Muslims, this is against religion, against rules of physics. So first of all, we have to get rid of the foreign occupation, whether it is British, French, Israeli, Jewish, whatever.
Except I understand that the Jews are specifically a problem.
Because Jews and Christians should live under in the Islamic yoke as dhimmis, as people who live under the auspice of Islam with very limited rights, as long as they behave according to the Islamic Sharia, which is designed for them. They cannot communicate with other people, with other nationalities. They have to pay the jizya, means the head tax. Head tax, skull tax. When they are humiliated, as it's stated in the Quran, they should walk in the Suez Canal rather than the sidewalk. And the Suez Canal in the Middle Ages, as you know, was not something which comes out only from the kitchen of their households. Okay, so in this, Jews and Christians should walk. The Muslims are walking on the dry and clean sidewalk. Jews and Christians are walking in the Suez Canal. And a Jew and a Christian cannot ride a horse, only a donkey. His home should be lower than the Muslim synagogues are lower from the mosque. So everything which was designed in order to denigrate the Jew and the Christian, in order to show them they don't have the right religion because they don't believe in the right prophet and they don't embrace the right ways of life as Islam gave to the world. So a Jew definitely has no right to rule over a Muslim. This is something which boggles the mind. And so the state of Israel, to begin with, is illegitimate totally. The occupation is not the occupation of 1967. The occupation is the occupation of 1948. This is the problem, because Jews should live under Islam. This country is Islamic, and there is no way to take out a land from Islamic world, from Dar al-Islam. Only a land has only one-way ticket to enter Dar al-Islam and not out. By the way, this is why they talk about Spain and the island of Sicily and large parts of the Balkans should return to be Islamic after the war. And the Jewish nation is not a nation because we are communities which belong to every state in the world. The American Jew is an American who happened to be Jewish. The Jew in Russia is a Russian national who happened to be Jewish. A Jew in Iraq is an Iraqi Arab who happened to be Jewish. Nothing combines them. They don't look alike each other. They eat the different foods. They dance to different music. Their cultures, their languages is different. Who the heck made them a nation? This is an invented nation. This is how they think about us.
You're in the Quran as a nation. I mean, Jerusalem as the...
Well, about the Quran we can talk about. And so there is no Jewish nation, so why do they need a state? And the Jewish religion is anyway null and void, since Islam came to the world to replace Christianity and Judaism. They actually took the theory of replacement and one step forward. Yes, now Islam came to the world to replace everything else and to take and to confiscate everything which ever was Jewish or Christian. This is why Abraham and Isaac and Jacob were all Muslims.
And
David,
Moses also.
And Jesus Christ as well. And Solomon built a mosque in Jerusalem, if you don't know. Okay, so this is the re-engineering of the world history and the world religions in order to show that Islam is the only valid religion while all the others are null and void. So the state of Israel has no right to exist because the land is Islamic, there is no Jewish nation, and the religion is null and void. And who made Israel? Balfour, the evangelical Anglican Christian. Means this is the whole state of Israel is a conspiracy of Christianity and Judaism against Islam. And this is how they view the whole thing from the religious point of view, before the national point of view, before the territorial point of view, before any judicial or whatever point of view. The what underlies the hatred to us and the activity against us is Islam in its widest interpretation. Because Jews, according to Islam, should live under the Islamic yoke and not as people who have rights of sovereignty and state and army, government, police, or whatever. They are not allowed to have, according to the principles of Islam. And it's not only radical Muslims. This is Islam. Islam without cancelling the other religions is like whiskers without a cat.
So, I mean, why is it that somebody like Osama bin Laden, who was at war against the United States and before that, against the Soviet Union and Afghanistan, why did he care about Israel? Israel appears, hatred of Jews appears in the propaganda of non-Palestinian or non-Levantine Arabs very prominently. You had Mohammed al-Dura appearing in the Daniel Pearl decapitation videos. They made a very big deal about his Judaism when they slaughtered him. He was not slaughtered as an American. He was slaughtered as a Jew. Why are the Palestinians and their jihad against Israel so configuring so prominently in jihadist thought?
Because this is actually what combines them with the Iranians, who are Shia, but still they are Muslims and think more or less about Israel the same way. This is what combines them with the Saudis.
I understand why the Iranians would want to do it, to make themselves more attractive to the Sunnis, right? Because they say we're championing the war against the Jews in the name of Islam, and therefore you shouldn't be opposed to us, right?
Right, but another thing that they want to show that they are better mujahideen than the Sunnis, who are making peace with Israel, who are tied like Egypt, like Jordan, who are all Sunnis. We, the Shia, are the real fighters. We don't succumb to the Jews or the Americans who pressure everybody in order to make peace with Israel. So this is another thing, the competition between the Sunni and the Shia Islam. By the way, Hezbollah is the same thing. He wants to show that his jihad against the Jews is better than the Sunnis.
Is he in competition with Hamas for who is better, or are they more...
Implicitly, yes. Explicitly, no. Means definitely there is the competition between the Sunni and Shia Islam. But when it comes to the destruction of Israel, they cooperate because this is good for both of them. Nobody wants to be shown as somebody who doesn't take part in the jihad against Israel. So on this, they can cooperate. So this is why Hezbollah actually supported Hamas tremendously by smuggling weapons and ammunition through the sea.
Teaching them how to fight.
Yeah, definitely.
So you brought two scarves, I think they are.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what they are?
This scarf is Hamas scarf. I got it in the Birzeit University from the branch of Hamas in this university, Birzeit, which is near Ramallah. Here you can see...
Well, 1 second, Birzeit, just to remind viewers, remember we talked about their opinion poll of the Palestinians 3 weeks ago that came out, where they showed that the vast majority of Palestinians, 3/4 of them support Hamas, support the slaughter of October 7th. So Birzeit University is considered by Westerners for some reason to be
a university,
a prestigious university. They get a huge amount of money from Western governments, and they are a jihadist university through and through, just like the Islamic University of Gaza, which I think was just blown up, which I hope it remains that way. But but Birzeit.
So in one of my visits in Birzeit University, there was a table of the Hamas group, and they gave me this and a hat as well. Now look at the emblem of this. You can see the map of the state of Israel from the river to the sea, and the book of the Quran, and the verse which is written here is that verse, and prepare against them whatever you have from power and bound horses in order to strike terror in the hearts of your enemies and the enemies of Allah. This is the verse which is here on your face. Okay? And the whole land of Israel means, where is Israel? Definitely in the sea or somewhere else. However, today people talk about...
What's that verse?
This is
Is that the Shahada?
The Shahada, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. No
God other
no
than...
God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. Now, people today talk about replacing Hamas with the PLO or with the PA. Okay, let's see what the PA produce. And this is the flag of the PA. Okay? Palestine. The whole country, from the river to the sea. This is their plan. This is their dream. This is what they prepare for. So what exactly...
They also have Al-Aqsa Mosque, I see.
So what exactly is the difference between Hamas in Gaza and PA in Gaza? And unfortunately, the American administration pushes forward the solution of the PA in Gaza instead of Hamas.
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing, the same map, the same Palestine of theirs. So the big difference will be that Hamas did to us what they did with Iranian weapons. The PA will do it with American weapons.
Right. So I want to talk, just because I forgot when we were talking about the rape, I wanted to talk a second about sadism. One of the things that was so
obvious,
dramatic, horrible, was the sadism of the assaults. And I'm wondering, why are they such sadists? I mean, why did they have to brutalize these families before they killed them? Why didn't they just kill them?
Not only sadism, documenting
the
sadism.
What is that?
Being proud of it and putting it on Telegram, and while they...
And by the way, they're not the only ones. The guy who carried out the slaughter of the children in Toulouse did it too. He had a GoPro camera on. So why? Why is this sadism? Why is this?
Because this is exactly what the verse in the Quran said, to strike terror into the hearts of your enemies and the enemies of Allah. Means to spread it. This is why ISIS were not only chopping heads of people, they were taking pictures, how they do it, in front of the camera.
Right.
And in order to engrave it into your memory, they would put the heads on fences or things like this, so everybody who walks in the street can see the heads of those who were decapitated, especially in Raqqa, in their capital. There was a square there, a round square, which they put the heads of some dozens of Syrian soldiers and officers on the fence, the heads. Okay? So this is in order to strike terror in the hearts of your enemy, because once you strike terror into the heart of your enemy, he's paralyzed. Now he can serve you. Now you can use him. Now you can operate him much more easily because he is afraid of you.
So, all right, I want to do one last question and then we're ending out. The West. So the West, I get the sense. I'm absolutely convinced. I mean, there are lots of common denominators between the West and Islamic Jihad or whatever on the issue of hating the Jews, and you see this this common ground on their support for the Palestinians. That the West seems to think that the more anti-Israel they are, the safer that they'll be from these jihadists. But then you see in places like Seattle or New York or L.A., they're preventing Christians from lighting Christmas trees. Where do you see this rise of these jihadists in the West taking the West?
Well, what we see today is the Western governments try to appease the alligator, hoping that he will leave them alone. They have mass migration of Muslims to their countries because they need workers because of their low birth rate and the development of the economy. And there is people who come to Europe. They don't come to be Europeans.
No.
They don't embrace the European culture. They don't drink wine, and they keep their tradition to a degree that is in some places dangerous for the locals to go into their neighborhoods, because these neighborhoods look like the Kasbah of Shechem, of Nablus. And they keep the religion, keep their tradition, including violence and honor killing and many other things which they bring from the homeland, because it is easy to change the location of people. It is very hard to change their culture. So
but it's also part of the hijra, right? I mean, that's the jihad of immigration.
yes,
right?
of course, this is another facet of the jihad. Jihad of migration, jihad of birthright. This is also part of the jihad. And now the local governments in Europe and maybe in America as well are afraid of these people because they might be angry at the government which supports Israel because they want Israel to get rid of Hamas because they know that if Israel collapses because of Hamas and the enemies, they will be the next. So on one side, they want to support Israel. But on the other side, they're afraid to support Israel because they're afraid of their own Muslims who might be very angry and destroy whatever they have, or slaughter teachers, as we saw in France, or damage the railway stations, as we saw in Madrid and other places, or take airplanes and smash them into buildings, as they did already in September 11. So they are afraid of the local communities which migrated to Europe and might destroy Europe only because they are too angry. And these people sometimes lose their temper and they behave in a way which will damage themselves as well. Because, during the last, let's say, 2 or 3 weeks, since we saw the big demonstrations in London, today British people started to talk about deportation. Something which unheard of until recently, until 2 months ago. British never spoke about this. It was so not politically correct to talk about deportation, especially those who have citizenship. It is impossible. But those who are still in the process of acquiring the citizenship, you can show them the way out. Don't call it deportation. Encourage them to return to their own homelands. Okay? This is what, in Britain, they started to talk about very recently.
Right. I want to try to sum up in the last few minutes what we should probably, or we can do another show on, which is what facing these people who believe that it is an act of devotion to sadistically murder our people and to brutalize our women and children, what is the response that Israel is required to carry out in order to protect ourselves?
Well, I think that Israel has no other choice but to rid the world from this plague named Hamas. Israel should...
But like you said, it's not just Hamas.
Yet Hamas is defined. Hamas is in Gaza. Well, of course, it's also in the West Bank or Judea and Samaria, but
and in Lebanon.
the presence of Hamas as a government is in Gaza. Israel has to show the Muslims before the others that Gaza is totally destroyed. Hamas has nothing remained from Hamas. No weapons, no tunnels, no people, no government, no nothing. Hamas became part of the past in Gaza. This is the picture which Israel should use in order to show everybody, Hezbollah the first, what will happen to them if they dare to attack Israel.
But the Americans are saying we can't do that. They're saying you're not allowed to use aerial bombs, you can't cause any damage, we want to rebuild Gaza after the war.
Well, remind me what the Americans did in Afghanistan.
But they also lost in Afghanistan. Who controls Afghanistan today?
Because they didn't do the right thing in Afghanistan in order to establish normal states. They should have divided Afghanistan to 9 states, 9 ethnic states, because Afghanistan has 9 ethnic groups which cannot even talk to each other because they don't have common language, like the English in India. This is why Afghanistan is a failing state. They should have divided just like the Soviet Union fell apart according to ethnic lines. And this is what, and I actually gave them this idea in 2010 when Obama had like a thinking about what to do with Afghanistan. I went to the United States and I sat with one of the advisors there, and I gave him this idea: divide Afghanistan to ethnic states, and this can work.
And so what about Gaza? I heard you say on another interview that we can do that in Gaza too.
Six emirates, one in Bet Laia, Bet Hanun in the north, the city of Gaza, Dir el-Balach, Khan Yunis, Abbasan, and Rafah. These are the six clannish groups which everyone should be an emirate, just like Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Kuwait, Qatar, those states, which are based on the clan.
Right. So
because this is the only thing which works in the Middle East.
That was what I wanted to go back to, because you also have the idea of the emirates in Judea and Samaria, and I think it's the same concept. So your concept is that Islam came to try to homogenize tribal societies under the flag of Islam.
But it failed.
Wait, tell me in a second. It failed, but the idea here is that we can defeat the forces of Jihad, of Islam, that are fighting, that are slaughtering us under the banner of Jihad by rebuilding the tribal identities or making them the dominant identities?
The tribal identities never went to nowhere. They remained. How do you know? You see that until this very day, tribes, in many cases, in the Arab and the Islamic world, tribes do not marry with each other. They marry within the tribe, with a big cost of genetic problems. But this is what happened. Islam, in this case, failed to change the culture of Muslims to ignore the tribal or the clannish differences and to marry with each other. Of course, Muhammad tells his followers to marry from afar, means from other
different
groups, but it doesn't work. Until even here in Israel, the Arab sector, the rate of marriage within the family, within the clan, is very high. Within the Arabs, especially in the south, in the
Bedouins.
more Bedouins. And this is how it is in Gaza. This is how it is in Judea and Samaria in many cases. This is why the clan is actually the basis of everything, of economic cooperation, of blood revenge. And many things are being explained or understood through the lens of the clannish behavior of the people. If you establish a state on a clan, you get a stable state, usually peaceful. Kuwait is one family. Al Sabah is the name of the family. Qatar is Al Thani. Dubai, Al Maktoum. Abu Dhabi, Al Nahyan. Saudi Arabia, Al Saud. Okay? So when you establish a state on a clan, it is a good country, peaceful country usually, doesn't look for enemies, doesn't need enemies in order to galvanize everybody, and they are peaceful within themselves and with others. While countries which you build on Western ideas, which combine many groups like Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, Libya, Algeria, are mayhem because the society is fragmented along ethnic lines like Arabs, Kurds, Turkmens, Berbers, and others, along religious lines like Muslims, Christians, Yazidis, Druze, Alawis, and many religions. In Iraq, there are 10 religions, only in Iraq. And sectarian groups, Shia, Sunnah, denominations, different. So when you try to establish a state with so many groups which traditionally hate each other, don't get married with each other, fight each other non-stop, it is a failing state eventually, like Iraq, like Syria. So since the Palestinian society is also very clannish, what I think is that the best thing to do is to establish emirates based on the clans in every city of Judea and Samaria as well. Means one emirate for the clans of Hebron, Jabri, Kawas, Menachem, Tamimi, Abu Snena, who have a court in order to solve every problem between them. And usually they don't fight each other. Another emirate in Jericho for the Arikats, another one in Ramallah for the Barghoutis, another one in Nablus for the Basris.
We have to finish up because my producer is like banging and saying, "Come on, we're done." But
this is the only solution.
But I mean, some of these clans are very, very violent.
Once they get the authority, they take responsibility. This is the culture of the Middle East.
Yeah, but that was the concept of like the Bush administration with the pothole theory of governance, that if Hamas takes over, they're going to be...
No, he should have divided Iraq to emirates. Yeah. And this is the problem. The Americans preserved the failing paradigm which the British and the French established 100 years ago, thinking that one day they will marry each other and become Iraqi
And that
nation,
never happened.
which never happened.
Well, it did. It happened in the sense that they were all being repressed by Saddam. Like Saddam was the clan that was in charge, and then everybody else was oppressed. And once that ended, it just
Because this is the only way how you can hold everybody under one pressure cooker or in one pressure cooker. But it doesn't work. It doesn't mean that they love each other. It doesn't mean that they function with each other. And once you take out the cover, means Saddam Hussein, everything is blowing up. So this is why
it
the
has to be.
Americans...
You have to be a devolution.
And I gave them this idea, divide them to homogeneous units, socially homogeneous units. This has some prospects of, living together with each other, like Dubai, like Abu Dhabi, like the others. But unfortunately, they didn't.
Well, I think that
didn't
we're
take
at
this
a
advice.
time of major reconsideration, since everything else has failed so completely and so dramatically and brutally and savagely. So I think that your ideas are pragmatic, and maybe they hold some hope. I think they certainly are better than anything
Israel,
else that's on.
in Judea and Samaria, Israel should stay forever in the rural areas, offer the villagers Israeli citizenship. This is not a threat because they're like 15% of the population, while Israel should stick to the majority of the land, which is like 90% or almost 90% of the land, and this is the best trade.
I think we're going to have a whole completely different, separate discussion about Judea and Samaria, and that'll be the headline for it. And in the meantime, I think that this has been incredibly
No,
educational.
but this is how the
and we're gonna
Palestinian
have to-
question should be solved.
I
Turn
think
into
that,
clans,
I think that
clannish Emirates.
given the failure of everything else, we're going to have to actually go back to the way people live in the real world. And as you said, that's a clannish division, and let it be. Let them do it.
And the Gulf proves that it works.
I think you're probably right. I wasn't sure that you were right. I'm still not sure that you're right, but I'm far more convinced than I was a decade ago.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And guys, I hope you got this. This is very important stuff that we just talked about today. And we'll be back later with a better Middle East, because we're going to be doing what Dr. Mordechai Kedar told us, because we've tried everything else and it's all failed, and this has a lot of sense to it. Talk to you soon, and keep watching this space, because you're going to get all the information you need right here on the Caroline Glick Show. Take care.